I remember when I finished high school, I started going through that moment of thinking a lot of the things that our young folks think today. Those who are in high school, those thinking about graduation, those thinking about the next steps. I remember when I was at that stage in life as well, I remember asking the question, now that I'm done with high school, what should I do with my life? Or what do I want to do with my life? And these are two things that if they come together and they sync, fantastic. But a lot of times we get to that point where like, well, I want to do this, but I feel like I should do this, right? And a lot of it is just pulling our attention and tugging at what we feel is what we're called to do passionately and what we're called to do sometimes almost responsibly, and sometimes they don't come together. Well, I remember my personal journey as I was discerning that process. Finishing high school, I just got back from Korea. I had a summer Korea tour trip for a basketball program. And I just got back from that, and that was a great experience. And then when I got back, I wanted to do more with what I experienced there, so I volunteered at our nearby Korean Youth Community Center as a basketball coach that had this little high school league on the weekends. And so I decided to, be a coach for that and stay close to the sport because I loved basketball growing up. And then I felt like, well, I still have a little bit more time. I volunteered as a big brother at a middle school nearby. And for those of you who know John Burroughs Middle School in LA, I got a chance to mentor a couple of students there. And that was a really neat, rich experience. And then I started going to a church, a United Methodist church at that time. And I felt like, well, if I want to know more about God, the more I learn, I should be able to kind of teach it, right? Or share it. And so I volunteered even as a Sunday school teacher. The thing about all that is that, I did all those things, and it wasn't because I was getting paid for it. It was really because I just felt moved to do it. There's something about wanting to hear more about God's voice, wanting to get closer to God, learning how to discern what God was trying to lead me to. And I remember, even though these weren't things that I did for pay, I do remember now, looking back, how much valuable those experiences were in shaping my discernment process towards my call to ministry. Think about that for a moment, folks. When you look back, if you could do a chunk of your life over again, what would you do differently? Think about that for a moment. Let's pray. Lord, as we come together this morning, I pray that the words that come from my mouth and the meditations of all of us gathered here will be one that is pleasing and glorifying to you. Amen. Well, I'm going to lecture a little bit today, folks. For those who don't know, I have a short background in teaching elementary, so I know that, like many of us, we always use some of the things that we've learned and experienced and use that in our daily lives. And so today I'm going to go do a little lecturing today, if you don't mind. Well, today's passage that Haley read from 1 Corinthians 8 is a peculiar one. I don't know how many of you were actually following, but it's just, as you read it, it's one of those things without explanation. I would be a little lost myself if I didn't dig into a little bit of the reading. Just to give you a little background, Paul, a messenger of God and the author of this writer, which he wrote this letter to a church in Corinth. And he writes about, in this particular portion of the letter, about food and how it is being used for good and for evil. And without going too much into it, let me just say the people who had authority were using food in ways that were manipulative, right? And so he talks a little bit about warning them, reminding them that this is not what God called us to do. Paul also writes about idol worship versus worshiping the God who created us all, because in those days there was a lot of Greek influence, Greek philosophy influence seeped heavily into the society, and it competed against all the teachings of Jesus Christ in those days. So when we think about that, he was trying to help them recognize God's voice. He was trying to help them recognize what it means to be a citizen of God's kingdom in the place that they live in, which is our call as well. Paul writes really to remind the members of the Church of Corinth to have more discernment. Can you all say discernment? Discernment is really, really important as we think about what it means to become God's people, to truly examine why they are making the life choices they are making. Becoming the people of God requires faithful discernment and making healthy choices. And in order to make healthy and faithful choices, the message from Paul is the invitation to keep getting closer to God. Now, when we think about God and as followers of Christ, it's not enough, I have to say, and Paul says the same thing here, is it's not enough to just know about God. It's not enough to just have knowledge of your faith. The call to follow Jesus is to keep getting closer and closer to our Creator through Jesus Christ. Now, how many of you agree with me that knowledge is 99% useless until it can be applied in a healthy way to our lives? Would you raise your hand? Right? What's the point of knowing it if you're not really going to use it to help others around you? One of the best ways to prepare, and again, I'm going to talk about food because that's one of my favorite topics, right? One of the best ways to prepare a prime, grass-fed ribeye is to cook it how, folks? Rare? Oh, wow, someone said rare. That's awesome. I would say a little bit more like medium rare. Now, that's my opinion. I get it. Some people like it well done and with ketchup. I have no idea why you would go there, but that's how certain people like it. But I would say if it's that high quality of a beef and steak, I would like to have it medium rare. The only way to prepare Korean barbecue kalbi is to cook it well done. No other questions, folks. I'm telling you right now, take it from a Korean. No other ways to cook that, right? I'm telling you right now, if you prepare the kalbi the way you would a prime grass-fed ribeye medium rare, it would be a waste of good beef. It wouldn't taste the way it's supposed to taste. In fact, it might even be good if it had a little char around the edges, right? Well, so what good is it to know this information? It's not much good unless it's only useful if you're going to apply this information when you decide to eat it. Now, although I mentioned beef and how good it may be, just like that, even though I mentioned this, and I made just all of you right now think more about the next time you have this yummy steak, well, I made you all hungry for a yummy steak. I shared last week, though, as I say this, that the leading cause of our environmental pollution is the world's mass consumption of what? Of beef, of cow, exactly, right? Like most yummy things, it's hard to cut off anything we like, especially eating beef. If you are going to have beef, be conscious at least of eating quality beef. Just don't eat any beef in some ways, right? This means if you're going to eat beef, steak, or even a good hamburger, take the extra step of checking that the beef that the restaurant or the marketplace is selling comes from a healthy source. In other words, choose beef, if at all possible, that is grass-fed. Of course, this means that it will cost more, but when you think about it, when you eat healthier and it costs more now, it may save you tons and thousands later in medical bills. Think about that, right? So you're really actually saving money in the long run and saving your life because you may actually be healthier and maybe even happier. It also means you are eating beef from a source that treats the cows in a way that when that beef comes to our dining table, it is more likely that you are eating beef that is not injected with chemicals that will eventually cause all of us to be sick and experience some sort of disease. We see it all around us, folks. Our environment is going to crap because the studies show that the world consumes so much beef that the demand for it requires beef producers to build more and more cattle all around the world that are not healthy for the cows, and therefore then when we eat it, it's not healthy at all for us because it's chemically injected beef. Now, I would love for someone to dig more into this and say, no, I disagree with you, Reverend Key. I looked into this, and it's okay to eat beef. I'm waiting for someone to tell me that. Trust me, I am. I am struggling with this, folks, because I love beef, right? Trying to meet the demands of beef has been the beef industry cutting down forests, producing more and more chemicals that are trying to grow bigger and larger cows that are unnatural and overall causing diseases all around the world for you and for me, for our children, our next generation, and the rest of society. The mass production of more and more beef is causing so much havoc on our climate that we don't even realize it because we're too focused on how yummy everything tastes, how yummy it is to eat a delicious In-N-Out burger, how yummy it is to eat a delicious, well put together Philly cheesesteak sandwich, or even one of my favorites, a Reuben sandwich at your nearby New York deli, right? I'm telling you, folks, I got issues, right? Now, I often wonder how the generation who are now 80 years and older lived such a long and healthy life. I realized when I thought about that, how is it that they're living such a long life, but all at the same time, they're pretty healthy? I look up to them, and I realize it's because when they grew up, they were not dealing with the mass production of so much food as the current generation is having to live through today. There are so much chemicals that go into our food today due to mass production that is no wonder why there are so many commercials around drugs that are supposed to help with the diseases and ailments that are caused by the very chemicals that we continue to put in our bodies because of the food that we have, that we eat. We need to learn from our elders on this one, I have to say. One advice on food, take it a step at a time. I say if there's one advice on food that I really like, is whenever you go to the market and you purchase something, read the ingredients. Just take a moment, just read the ingredients. If there are ingredients your grandmother never heard of, then most likely it's probably not good for you. Example, when you buy peanut butter, you would think the ingredients should be what? 1, peanuts. 2, sugar. 3, maybe a little bit of salt, right? Okay? Well, I decided to do my own investigation on this, right? I went right to my cupboard and I got my jar of peanut butter. I love peanut butter. Peanut butter banana, well, you name it. I love peanut butter, right? Peanut butter chocolate, well, although I haven't had chocolate in a long time. But I looked at this peanut butter jar and guess what it contains? So I want you to know, if you recognize it, just go thumbs up. If you don't recognize it, thumbs down. Deal? All right. When I looked at it, it contains roasted peanuts. Go ahead, thumbs up, right? Sugar, recognize? Salt. So far, so good. 2% or less molasses. Right, okay. Fully hydrogenated vegetable oils, right? It's around rapeseed, never heard of that. And soybean. Grandma's gonna be like, what is that, right? Well, soybean she will understand. Mono and diglycerides, I don't even know how to pronounce it properly, right? Thumbs down? I have no idea what that is, to be honest, unless you're a scientist or. So I put that away and I said, okay, maybe I shouldn't be eating this peanut butter. And if I do, I'm gonna eat a little at a time, right? Then I read the ingredients to my organic almond butter, which I take pretty much almost every day, right, with my shake. And what's in the ingredients of my organic almond butter? I took a look at the ingredients and guess what it says? Again, thumbs up if you recognize, thumbs down if you don't, right? Organic roasted peanuts. Thumbs up. The second ingredient, there are no other second ingredients. That's all it says. It's all almonds. This is great. I can't wait to go back home and get a finger lick, okay, I shouldn't say that, right? A spoonful of my roasted almonds. You all get the idea is what I'm saying. Folks who are still with us and are 80 years and older have lived healthy lives because they grew up with food that they can actually see. They grew up with food that they actually know. The sad part of it is that today, they're eating today's food now at a later age, and it's increasing the amount of like physical ailments that the folks are dealing with. The two things that I realize, and I keep hearing over and over again, is the words dementia and Alzheimer's, right? When you hear about that, all of a sudden it's continuing to be on the rise. And as I learned about this, you say, well, there's an increase of older adults experiencing the challenges of these two things that are just causing a lot of issues, not only in their personal lives physically, but also with families. And it's just causing a lot of this because they're taking this in on a daily basis. Why? Because it's way more affordable to eat cheap food, which have all these chemicals. So I ask, how does companies like beef companies control and develop mass production of animal life? Mainly because they have access to these chemicals that they continue to inject. In fact, some studies show that communities around the world who have people who have the longest lifespan, they call them blue zones. How many of you have you seen the Netflix Blue Zone? Amazing, right? And one of the top places in the world that is a blue zone is what? Is where? Okinawa, right? And I don't know if I shared this last week, but I couldn't believe it. There is a blue zone right here in America, right here in our backyard in Southern California. And it's at Loma Linda. It's a blue zone, folks. And when you look at all the places of the blue zone that have this common thing in place, and that is a lot of the blue zone areas, in fact, all of them, they have a high dose of communities who are high in eating plant-based food. In other words, veggies, fruits. Now I know we say fruits, if you have high sugar intake, that might be an issue, but still more plant-based rather than meats and proteins in that way. In fact, they say those areas have experienced almost 60% less Alzheimer's and dementia for those who are 70, 80, 90, and even 100 years old. Paul wrote to the church in Corinth to highlight the importance of living a life that is within God's will. He has encouraged the members to choose to build one another up. In other words, whatever we choose in life, it's not just about us, it's about our loved ones, it's about our neighbors, it's about you, it's about me, but it's really about those around us. He has encouraged members to choose to build one another up, not with just knowledge, but with love. We are reminded today that it's important to love our God with everything that we have, and just as important, it is important for us to love one another the way we do ourselves, so that we can enjoy each other and we can enjoy the world God created us for all of us to live in together. Choosing to live healthier not only means it is healthier for us, but it also means it's healthier for our environment. When we choose to live and to be healthier, the world around us is healthier. One way to truly live healthier is to discern and notice the places God is at work among us. Think about what we do at this church, right? Let me say that again. One way to think about how to live healthier is to discern and notice the places God is at work among us. And I think about so many different things. One, specifically, the resolution list. Now, you all have a second little thing on your bulletin. It's called the resolution list. And I'm going to say, join the resolution. Okay? I know that's it's corny. But anyway, join the resolution, right? Which is great because when we first started this, I only had 2 people, and then we had 4 people, and now we have all these folks who are joining the resolution. In other words, if you want, and this is your first time and you want to go ahead and join the resolution, we are listing folks who want to put together a simple, very realistic resolution to be healthier this year, whether it's relationally, physically, whether it's a thing that you do that you enjoy, whatever it may be, spiritually, it may be emotionally. We want you to go ahead and list them down. If you want, put it in the offering basket, and we want to take this moment, not this moment, but this opportunity really to take this home and pray for the people. When you read it, I'm not asking, we just don't want anyone to feel guilty or shame, so don't ask them about this, but this is for you to take home and pray for the people that are on this list to pray that we would all fulfill our resolution. So I say, join the resolution. I'm now at number 7. I hit the exercise machine 7 times, and I do feel a little healthier. I'm thinking about not wanting to waste all the exercise that I put in so far by eating bad food. Somehow it affects me. Now we're going to slip here and there, don't get me wrong, and I'm not going to tell you about it too much, but I'm going to continue. And I use this to really pray for all those people who are on this list, because I would like all of us to experience some small form of victory. Now, as we think about all of our Centenary treasures, we can learn from them because God was with them. God continues to be with them. And for this reason, I asked Reverend Mark this morning to talk story a bit. Today, a special day, because we're celebrating our Centenary treasures as a family, and because it is important and it is healthy to find ways to celebrate not only all of us together, but especially our elders. I want to invite Reverend Mark to come on up and share maybe a story or two if you can. So, Mark, you ready? Appreciate this.
Thank you, Reverend Key, for that message. You know, it just occurred to me that right around the corner from us out in West LA, a new restaurant opened up recently, a Japanese restaurant, and the name of the restaurant is Kusaki. Kusaki, many of you know, means plant in Japanese. Kusa is grass, ki is tree, so tree and grass, plants. And it is, in fact, a Japanese vegan restaurant. So, Reverend Key, after hearing your message, I'm going to go check it out this week. Okay. This is a Sunday, the last Sunday of January, in which Centenary traditionally has honored those who were 80 and 88, and we've kind of followed the Japanese custom called Beiju, which in Japan is honoring those who are 88 years of age. Actually, that term Beiju is actually a play on the Chinese character, which is pronounced Bei, which is, if you know your kanji, if you know your characters, Bei means rice. But when you break it down, it is also Japanese for 88. And so that's where the tradition of that's where this tradition comes from. Did you say there's a list of those who?
Yeah, we're going to list them.
Oh, you're going to list them, okay. So today we celebrate those in the congregation who are 80 and 88 years of age. But we also celebrate another special group of folks, those who are centenarians, 100 years or over. And we know, or at least I know of 3 of them that are among us today. The one at the top is Mary Yonemoto, who is 106. And then we have 2 who are 103. Mary Yonemoto's sister, Ruth Kubo, and also Hideko Yamamoto. So they are 103. So we have at least 3 members of the congregation who are centenarians, in addition to being 80 and 88. And those of you who are in the 90s, don't worry, we haven't forgotten about you. We include you in there also. So one other thought occurs to me as I was hearing Reverend Key's sermon. There's no doubt in my mind that all of these seniors who are 80, 88, 90s, 100, 106, one of the reasons that they have lived as long as they have lived is because, my theory is, in their younger days, they ate a lot of food that had MSG, right? And Japanese, you know, we call MSG Ajinomoto, right? So for all that can be said about eating healthy, there is something to be said. There's something to be said on the other side of the fence as well, okay? But again, we celebrate today these persons who not only have lived long, but as Reverend Key said, have lived healthy lives, but also have lived lives in which they have imparted their wisdom to all of us younger ones. and whose examples who have set forth the example for living a good life. You know, once when I was teaching a youth Bible study class years ago, one of the kids in the class said, well, you know, only old people, church is only for old people. And my response was, old people don't come to church just because they're old. Old people have gotten old because they have gone to church all their lives. So for those of you out there, particularly younger ones, yeah, next time you're about to say, oh, church is just for old people, think about that. Okay? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Mark. And as we can see, I mean, I wanted to take this moment as Reverend Mark shares, you know, that we are here to celebrate all of our folks who are 80 and over. And I know traditionally it was 80 and 88, but we decided, you know what, nowadays we want to go ahead and celebrate them as often as we can. Anyone who's 80 and over, and on top of that, as we celebrate them, we celebrate one another because we are all connected in that way. And as I was looking at the list, there's some folks who are here present with us, and then there's some folks who couldn't make it, and then there's some folks who are, you know, we'll see some of their photos up here. And just to let you know that all of them are still with us. Well, except for one person, but all of them are still with us.
Yeah, I'm still listening to
Our prayers in our own time. And as I think about this, man,
yeah.
see this list, and I almost want to rename our church to Blue Zone United Methodist, because we're doing a pretty good job in some ways of connecting and being associated with all of our centenary treasures. So with that said, if I may, I'm going to go ahead and lift up some of these names up here. So Todd, can you see that? All right, cool. Let me make sure that I have, because I can't see from here, but if your name is lifted here, Dorothy Gerke, who is now in Las Vegas, who has joined another church, and she left our church a year and a half ago, but she continues to remain a vital part in our hearts. And so Dorothy Gerke, and we have Yoshia Hagia, who is 100 years this year. Amen. Right? Yes. And then we have Richard and Francis Cuscino, and we have Amy Kamey, and I don't know who that funny little guy there next to her is, but she was nice enough to take a photo with me. So we have them as well. And Amy actually is present with us this morning, so I'm so glad to see you, Amy. Good morning. We have Marion Manaka and Timber Manaka, and Timber is 102 years old this year, all right? And Jean Miyamoto, who is the mother of Julie Tsunabe, she was with us until just a week and a half ago. And so she almost made it with us, but she may be absent in body, but she is present with the Lord. Amen. But she is one of our centenary treasures. And we also have Nellie Mitani, who turns 105 this year, right? And then we also have Sets Minabe as well. We all know Angel Nishinaka. She can be here with us, right? And we also have Hisako Shohara. Kathy and Tetsu Tanimoto and Asao Tokunaga. We have Fumie Yahiro and her daughter, and we have Lily Yamaguchi. And these are folks who couldn't be with us today. And the last one, but not the least as well, as Reverend Mark mentioned, Mary Yonemoto, who turns 107 this year. And I remember visiting her with Caroline a couple years ago as we were celebrating the Centenary Treasures. And even then, at 105, I want to say she was trying to share with us a cookie recipe that she's still baking, I feel like, right? And the folks who are with us today, we'll see them on the list. And I'm going to read them. And if your name is read, and if you're here with us, if I can ask you, just kind of stand up if you're able, or just kind of raise your hand if you can. Yas and Joyce Aochi. Kyung-hee Choi, who is part of the Nichigo ministry. Mary Enomoto. Martha Espinosa. Shigeko Geiger. Takeko Griffin. Hideko Ibaraki. These are folks who are part of the Nichigo and are with us. And Junko Ito, Haruko Kato, Reverend Ryohei and Ryoko Kawano. We have Mary Kimoto, who is 101 years this year. Setsuko Kitabayashi, Shig and Yuko Kondo. Ruth Kubo, who is 104, Reverend Mark mentioned her as well. Dora Kunishige, who is 102 this year. Harry Kuruma, right? Victor Liu, and Kiyomi Lung. All right? We're not done yet, folks. I'm telling you, this is Blue Zone United Methodist, right? Grace and Bush Miyoka, Shu Miyazaki, Albert and Pauline Morita, Sachiko Morita, Ruth Murakami. I know I saw Ruth, right? Welcome, Ruth. Good to see you. Reiko Ogawa. I know she's here. Reiko. All right. Reverend Michio and Sakako Okawa. Skeeter and Carol Sasaki. Richard Sarazawa. All right, I know Richard's here. Yo Sarazawa, his brother, right? And I found out a couple years ago, Yo sang in our choir for 40 years plus, right? Jack Shigatomi, Terry Sugamura. Is Terry here too? Emi Takashima, Fred and Kaz Togawa, Marion Wada, Hideko Yamamoto, who is Tin Yamamoto's mother, and she's 104 this year. Right. Koichi Yamazaki, Emi Yasui, I know Emi's here too. Right. And Sumi Yonemoto.